Hey M-Carbo Brotherhood, this is Mark with M-Carbo, and today we're going to go over how to install the M-Carbo trigger spring kit for the P320. For this install, you're going to need a punch set, a hammer, your bench block, and then some synthetic grease to help keep some of those small parts in place. So first we're going to check the chamber, bolt face, and magazine well to make sure this gun's clear. So we're going to do some stock trigger pull readings first. Lyman trigger pull gauge. To keep it consistent, I'll be pulling at the bottom of the trigger so that it doesn't slip when I'm pulling it. So first one is 3 pounds, 7 ounces. 3 pounds, 10.2 ounces. 3 pounds, 9 ounces. 3 pounds, 9.7 ounces. 3 pounds, 9.2 ounces, for an average of 3 pounds, 9 ounces. So doing trigger pulls with the flat trigger at the bottom here, these trigger pulls are going to be a little bit lighter than what you might see, and this gun has been tested thousands and thousands of rounds before, so the parts are a little more worn in. If you have a curved trigger, your trigger pull readings might be a little bit heavier, so just keep that in mind for your readings. So we're going to go ahead and rotate this takedown lever down like that so that the slide can come off. All right, we're going to take our punch here, and you see this rear extractor spring guide here. We're going to push that in with our punch, and then as that's getting pushed in, we're going to use our thumb to slide the slide rear cap right out, just like that. So now you can see your striker housing right there, and we're going to just pull that out, just like that. Put our slide to the side here, and now we have the striker spring that we're going to replace for our lighter M-Carbo striker spring. So we're going to take that out of the bag here, and then to remove this from the striker assembly, we're going to point it straight up on the table and use your finger to kind of push on the striker lug in the back here, and we're going to go ahead and push down on the spring to remove that tension on the spring cup here, so you can remove that. So now we can take out the spring. So we've noticed that some of the older P320s that they come in 2 separate cups instead of one like this. And that doesn't matter, just they do the same thing, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. So we're gonna keep the striker housing together with the striker because there's a small spring inside here that can get lost very easily if you take this apart. So just keep this all together right here. So we'll go ahead and take our lighter striker spring here and put it back on top just like before. You wanna push up on the striker lug here to keep the striker sitting up while we push down on the spring. We'll take our cup and put it over the striker and allow the spring to wrap around that just like that. So we're gonna go ahead and just slide this back in the slide as you normally would. And then we're gonna take our slide rear cap, push the striker housing down a little bit so you can get that in the grooves here, just like that. But don't push it all the way back in because you still need to press in the rear extractor spring guide. So we're gonna take our punch again, and we're gonna push down on that as we slide that forward. So now that's retained inside the slide, so we can put that aside and move on to installing our sear springs. So first thing we're gonna do is take out our takedown lever here. For newer guns, that might be a little more tricky and hard to get out, so just work with it. And then we're gonna, taking out the FCU here, there's this little pocket inside the grip module here that you can use a punch to kind of wedge under, and then you can pop that straight out. If your FCU is really tight in your grip module, you might want to use something stronger so you don't bend your punches. So now that we have the FCU out, we can put the frame to the side, and now we're left with the FCU fully assembled. So first thing we're going to do is remove this trigger. So to do that, we're going to push down on our trigger bar here, and then use our other thumb to push up and get that around the safety lever housing here, and then push it also back in this direction once that's up and out. So now that we have that out, our trigger is fully rotated forward, and we can, holding the trigger bar here, we can slide that right out. So now we have the trigger bar still connected with the trigger bar spring here. So what we're gonna do is push down this direction, kind of up and out, and rotate that trigger bar just like that so the spring can come loose. And then we'll take out the spring. We'll put that to the side. We're gonna be keeping this spring. So now that we have the trigger bar and trigger removed from the FCU, we can go ahead and push up on the slide lever catch to release the takedown safety lever. Now that that's released, we can go ahead and punch these pins out on the side here. So first thing we're gonna do is punch out the slide catch lever pin, just like that. And then now this can be removed. So this slide catch lever spring post can also come loose from here, so we're just gonna make sure we don't lose that, but keep that together. Now we're gonna take out the trigger stop pin. This could be a little bit more tricky for you, so if you have a hammer, you can go ahead and put that on a bench block and then hammer that out. But these guns have been taken apart so many times that they're a lot looser now, so it's easier. So now for the tricky part, we're gonna remove the takedown safety lever. So to do this, we're gonna need to push this back because it's being caught right here on the FCU here. So we're gonna need to push this back and then push it down this way. And as we're doing that, we're gonna try to push out this lever that's being retained by this spring back here. So we're gonna push out and down until we get the takedown safety lever in this position where the front is on this side of the FCU and the back has been poked out just a little bit, if you can see. So the back is poking out just like that. And from here, we're just gonna go ahead and rotate that back side out just like that so that the back side gets released and then you can remove it. So now that we have the takedown safety lever out, we can go ahead and get into these pins and to remove the sear. So before we take out this sear, just go ahead and push down with your finger on the sear. You can feel how strong those sear springs are on it. And then when we put our new springs in, you can do the same thing and feel how much lighter it is. So there's 2 pins here that need to be punched out. So we'll go ahead and punch these pins out. Keep your finger over the sear here because when these pins come out, the sear is gonna wanna fly out this way. So just so we don't lose anything. These pins also might be tough to punch out easily like this. So go ahead and use your bench block and hammer. The sear is gonna fall out and the safety lever. So these are the springs that we're gonna be replacing. So to do this, they're gonna be somewhat tight on these posts here. So just be careful when you remove them. Just like that. We're gonna put these to the side with our striker spring. Put it in a little baggie if you wanna save them for later. And we're gonna take our new lighter sear springs here. We're just gonna go ahead and put them on these posts. These springs are designed to wrap around these posts tightly, so it helps if you kind of rotate them in to get them really around that post. Instead of just pushing it straight in, it could deform or bend the springs, which wouldn't be good. So make sure that you're twisting in the right direction of the coils so that it's closing the coil as you're rotating it. And it wants to push, slide, rotate it in kind of like a screw. So once those are nicely in, they're straight out this way, nice and even. We're gonna go ahead and put that to the side here and grab our FCU again and take our safety lever. We'll be the first one to go back in. So when you're putting in the safety lever, you wanna make sure that this arm here is pointing forward in the FCU. You don't wanna install this backwards like this. So make sure that that arm is pointed in the forward direction of the firearm. So we're just gonna put it right inside this pocket and try to line it up with this bigger hole here. So once that's to the side, we'll grab our safety lever pivot pin here. It's gonna be the bigger one with the big head. So we're gonna take that and push it right through the hole. Your safety lever housing might be a little bit off center. This is allowed to wiggle here. So make sure that's lined up or else your pin won't really go through. And then you're gonna line it up with the hole here. So now our safety lever is captured. Once that, we're gonna push it all the way to the side here on this side so that we have room for our sear to slide right in. So we're gonna set this down and then take our sear, and you'll see inside the safety lever housing, there's these 2 little pockets that capture the sear springs here. So it's gonna go inside these 2 little pockets here. Put the back side of the sear in first. We want the safety lever pin to go inside this little pocket here, inside the sear. So we're gonna push this in and make sure that safety lever pivot pin, that sear wraps around the safety lever pivot pin here. So now that we got it in place, I usually put my finger on the bottom here so that it doesn't fall all the way through like that. So we want to push up with our finger here on the bottom side of it, just like that. And then make sure that our springs are inside those pockets also. So kind of push it up like that and allow the springs to kind of rub along the back of that safety lever housing so that they're 100% captured inside the safety lever housing. So now that we have that, I'm gonna hold it down with my finger here, push it down a little bit, and then line up this hole with the sear. Now we're gonna take our sear pivot pin. It's gonna look like this, the really small flat head on this side. And we're gonna take that, push it right through the hole, and then I usually wiggle the safety lever housing a little bit so that it lines up properly, and then use your pointer finger again to kind of push up on the sear to make that hole line. And now it's captured in there. And then you can test out your sear, see how much lighter that really is when those springs are in. Oh man. So now that we have that, next is gonna be to reinstall the takedown safety lever. So to do this can also be the little tricky part. Do the exact opposite of what we did to remove it. So we're gonna put it inside the FCU like this, on this side of the FCU, so that it's kind of angled back in, and we place it kind of like how it was when we were moving it, just like that. But first we need to push this spring here back that way so that the safety lever pin can go inside in front of it. So we're gonna align the front of it on the bottom side, have the top pointing up, and take take a thin punch, a 1/16 punch, get in front of that spring here, and then use your thumb here to kind of push it back, just like that. And then your takedown safety lever should fall right in front of it, and then just kind of push it with your pointer finger forward, and then you can remove the pin. So now we have that captured in. This is just gonna wiggle to that spot. So we wanna push back on it and kind of pop it back into place. So we're gonna push back and around. If you're having trouble with your punch, getting that spring back, it helps if you have like a tool like this with a 90-degree bend, so that you can kind of just push it in and pull. But if you don't, punches work great. So now we have the takedown safety lever back in. We're gonna put in the trigger stop pin, and it's gonna be the same size as this here pivot pin, but it's gonna have a lot bigger head. So we're gonna go ahead and line up the takedown safety lever, punch that in right there, and then make sure that it lines up with the bottom hole here. And you might need a hammer if you have a newer gun to kind of tap that into place. So now we're gonna take our slide lever catch, and if your spring is falling off, I like to use a little synthetic lube here, and I just coat the bottom of that spring post just a little bit. Just put a little synthetic grease on that so that it sticks to the slide catch lever. Now it's not going anywhere. Line up your hole with the bigger hole on the FCU on the top here. Take your slide catch lever pin here and put it right through the hole. Just like that. So now our slide catch lever is captured inside the FCU. And then now you're gonna take your trigger bar, flip over the FCU, take your trigger bar and align the leg just on the outside of the safety lever housing here. Take our trigger bar spring with the little leg offset. That's gonna go inside the hole inside the trigger bar here. Rotate the trigger bar up so you can allow that spring hook to kind of really get close to that hole here so that it can bend in and put your hook right in. And now your trigger bar is captured along with the FCU. So keep your finger on the trigger bar here so that it doesn't fall out. And now we're gonna take our trigger, put it right through this hole, if you see here. Just like that. Now that we have the trigger inside the FCU, we're gonna raise it up just a little bit so we can get the trigger bar under the trigger here. And this is where you're gonna be pushing up and around to get that trigger bar leg around the safety lever housing. We're gonna line up our trigger bar hole with this small little post in the trigger. So we're gonna line that up, make sure that's captured, and now we can push up and over as we rotate the trigger so that it falls in place, just like that. Yours might be caught like that kind of, so what you wanna do is just kind of play with it a little, move it down, pushing it down like that helps so that it can fall right in place, and now your trigger can function properly. All right, so now the FCU is fully assembled, and we can take our grip module and put it right back in. Put the trigger end in first, just like that, so it pokes through, and then push back into the grip module just like that so that it gets captured back here, and then push down on it, and then make those holes align. Now we're gonna take our takedown lever, put it right in the hole, push it all the way in, and rotate it down. So now we can take our slide, put it back on, lock it to the rear, and then rotate that takedown lever back to its original place, and it's good to go. So we're gonna use our alignment gauge again and put it at the bottom of the trigger, just like before, to keep our trigger pulls consistent. And first one, I got 2 pounds, 13.6 ounces. 2 pounds, 10.7 ounces. 2 pounds, 12 ounces. 2 pounds, 11.6 ounces. 2 pounds, 11.3 ounces for an average of 2 pounds, 11.8 ounces. The trigger pull feels amazing with a nice reset because we kept that stock trigger bar spring. So you get a nice positive reset with a great trigger pull reduction. And then here we have our trigger also installed with the spring kit. This is the P320 Spectre. 2 pounds, 9.8 ounces. 2 pounds, 7.8 ounces. 2 pounds, 9.2 ounces. 2 pounds, 12.4 ounces. 2 pounds, 5.8 ounces for an average of 2 pounds, 9 ounces. So that just shows that our trigger can also reduce the pull weight a little bit by just a couple ounces. But if you're looking for that extra trigger pull reduction, our trigger is a great complement with our spring kit. So now we'll do some trigger pull tests with the P320s with the manual safety here. So we've got the curved trigger here to show you the difference between flat and curved trigger pulls on stock springs. So I got my Lyman pull gauge here. We're gonna pull from the center or wherever it's curved, and we're just gonna pull parallel with the barrel here. First pull is 5 pounds, 10.2 ounces. Second pull is 5 pounds, 12 ounces. We got 5 pounds, 7.9 ounces. 5 pounds, 10.9 ounces. And 5 pounds, 4.6 ounces. For an average of 5 pounds, 9.1 ounces. So now we're gonna go ahead and show you the differences between the manual safety P320s and the regular P320s. So replacing the striker spring, it's gonna be the exact same as any other P320 here. We're gonna use our punch here to push down on the rear extractor spring guide here, if you can see. And then use our other thumb to push forward the slide rear cap here. And then we can remove our striker assembly. So now again, we just push it down to remove that spring cup, just like that. And then slowly remove that OEM lighter striker spring here. We're gonna slide right back over the striker, push down on it, and then put the spring cup back in. Just like that. Slide it right back into the striker channel. Use our slide rear cap to start it, just halfway on it about, and then push in that rear extractor spring guide. Push that down and then slide the plate back down. So now we have the striker spring back in. We're gonna take out our takedown lever here, just by wiggling that out. And then again, if your FCU is kind of tight inside your grip module, you're gonna just use a punch. The bigger the punch, the better, so it doesn't bend it. And then kind of just poke that out like that. So for curved triggers, you might catch here on the bottom, so if you don't want to scratch up, you can just kind of pull the trigger a little bit and poke that out. So now that we have the FCU out of the grip module, we're gonna remove the trigger just the same as the regular P320s by pushing the trigger bar outside of the sear housing here so that the leg is sitting on the outside and it's kind of out. And then we can rotate our trigger forward and just pull that straight out. And then do the same thing as we push down on the trigger bar here and kind of rotate the trigger bar so that that leg can free from the FCU and the spring will pop right out. Now that we have that removed, we're gonna take down the trigger stop pin with our punch. And again, that might be tight in there, so you can put it on top on your bench block and use a hammer to punch that out. Now that we got that removed, we're gonna flip it over and remove our takedown safety lever here. You can see that the sear pivot pin is what's capturing the manual safety and stopping it at these two positions here. So we're gonna have to push that just far enough out so that we can rotate this manual safety all the way out and remove it. So to do that, we need to push back the takedown safety lever here so that it's not blocking the pin from moving out. And the easiest way to do that is to keep the slide catch lever still installed in here and put it back in your grip module here. You want to tilt it back so that the arms of the safeties can slide right into the pocket. And what we're going to do is use our takedown lever and reinstall that to kind of push the takedown safety lever back behind so that it gets captured by the slide catch lever here. So now that it's caught, we can remove takedown lever again. And now you can see that this takedown safety lever is just far enough for that pin to punch out. So we're gonna take our punch here and kind of wedge it in between there and just push until that comes out, or until that, we're gonna push until that's pushed just far enough, just like that. So now we have enough room to rotate our safety and move it out of place. Make sure that you keep your finger on this piece here because it's spring loaded, so that's gonna wanna fly out if you're not holding that. So we wanna keep that together in one piece and put that to the side carefully. And now we have access to the sear pivot pin, which is the other half of our safety, so that we can carefully remove that. So now we can go ahead and remove our slide catch lever. So we're gonna take our punch again, punch that pin out, and then that should slide right out easily. So now we're gonna flip it over and remove our takedown safety lever here. You can see that it's still pushed back by this pin sticking out. So we're gonna do the same exact thing that we do with the regular P320s and kind of push back this way and rotate it out as we go. All in one motion and should slide right out. And since the safety lever pivot pin was removed earlier, that sear is gonna wanna come springing out. So we can go ahead and take out that sear pivot pin. Now everything should fall right out for you. Now we can get to the sear springs here and just remove those carefully and install our or lighter sear springs. So again, these are going to be a little tight on the posts here. So we're going to want to kind of twist as we push on it in the direction of the coil so that you're kind of compressing the coil instead of unwinding the coil so that you don't damage them too much. Now we got them on. So now we're going to take our safety lever and slide it into the sear housing here and line it up the bigger hole with the safety lever, and take our safety and slide that in so that it captures the safety lever. Now that we have, this is going to want to slide back out, so we want to keep our fingers on it so that it stays in place, and install the sear. And again, you want to make sure that these springs go into those little pockets in the back of the sear housing here. There's two separate little rectangular pockets that it slides into, and if it helps, I like to push, like once I get it in place, I push it back up and really let those springs slide on the back wall there. Keep my finger on it and take our sear pivot pin, slide that through the hole to capture the sear now. So now you can feel that spring tension on the sear is a lot lighter than the stock. So now that we have the sear and safety lever in place in the sear housing, we're going to reinstall the takedown safety lever here. It actually gets in the way of the manual safety here. So to do that, we're going to carefully remove it. We're also going to keep our finger on the sear here so that it doesn't get pushed up. We want to keep it in that position right there. So we're going to slide it out, and now the safety lever is free to move, so we don't want to be turning or twisting our FCU and letting that slide around. So we're going to carefully position the safety lever. This arm here is positioned right where it needs to be, and then kind of switch hands here, holding the sear down, and take our 1/16 punch and push back this spring just like we would a regular P320, and kind of fit that takedown safety lever arm inside that pocket as we're still pushing down on the sear to keep it in place. And then just like that, and once you have it seated in there, quickly pull out your punch. So now that we have it seated, but the takedown safety lever is not necessarily in place exactly, we're going to want to quickly take our manual safety and push it back in that hole so that we can capture the safety lever here. Now it might not go all the way through, that's all right. We'll finish that later, but now we're gonna reposition the takedown safety lever to be back in place how we want it. So we're gonna push down to this to push it to the opposite side, and then push back so that it can lock back in place just like that. This may be a little tricky, so don't feel bad if you get frustrated with the install. It can be very complicated. So now that we got one half of the manual safety in, we're gonna make sure that it's all the way through the hole by kind of lining up, make sure that it's centered in the hole and pushing it through, just like that. Now we're gonna flip it over to this side, and we're going to have to push this sear pivot pin back so that it's flush with the flush with the FCU, so that we can have clearance to put this other half of the manual safety back on. And to do that, we need to have the takedown safety lever pushed back again. So what we're gonna do first, reinstall the slide catch lever. First, put the pin in, just like that. We're going to be careful that we're not moving the FCU around too much too, because the manual safety can still slide out. We're going to put it back in our grip module. This is just a little trick that I've learned. Take your takedown lever again and just rotate it so that the takedown safety lever is captured by the slide catch lever. And then carefully pop it back out of the FCU here. And now you can see that the takedown safety lever is clear of that pin, so we can carefully push that and make it this side flush with the FCU, just like that. So now we're going to rotate the manual safety up, line the other half of our manual safety up, and then make sure that this little piece gets caught inside that pocket inside the FCU here on the bottom side. And then we're just going to want to rotate up. Now it's captured in. So now we need to push the sear pivot pin back into place. As you see, it's slightly interfering with the manual safety here, so we're going to want to be very careful and then just barely rotate that back to where it's not all the way popped open like this, but it's just like about halfway. Just like that, so that it clears it. And be very careful. You want to take your punch again, kind of wedge it in, and then just push it back into place. So now that is what's capturing the manual safety here now. So now it can rotate into its positions of safe and fire. Now that we have the manual safety back installed, it's just going to be the same install as the regular P320s. We're going to take our trigger stop pin here and then push that back through the hole. Get our hammer and bench block and just tap that back into place like that. Make sure that the hole aligns on the bottom here by just pushing it around. You get that started, and then you hammer it back into place. Now we're going to take our trigger bar and have that leg outside of the sear housing at first so that we can install our stock trigger bar spring. We're going to put the leg with the offset inside the trigger bar hole and then wrap around and use that hook to hook it into the FCU just like that. So as you can see, the trigger bar is outside of the sear housing at first. So now that we have our trigger bar spring captured in the trigger bar in the FCU, so now we can see the trigger bar's leg here is still outside of the sear housing. So we're going to hold that in place and reinstall our trigger by sliding it through that hole inside the FCU and mating the trigger bar hole with the trigger. And now what we're going to do is push up on the trigger bar again and kind of rotate the trigger forward as we do that so that it'll slide back inside the sear housing there and work properly. So now that we have the FCU completely reassembled, we're going to take our grip module here and we're going to go the back end in first so that the manual safeties can fit inside that little slot area in the grip module. And then we're going to want to push the trigger so that it can clear the grip module there and slide back into place. We're going to take our takedown lever, push that back in, and then push it down so that we can reattach our slide. And then rotate the takedown lever back into place. And now your P320 with the manual safety is installed. Now we're going to check to make sure our manual safety is working properly. Safety up, trigger doesn't pull. Safety down, trigger pulls. Perfect. Now let's get some trigger pull readings again with our lighter spring kit installed. We're going to be pulling at the same location around the middle of the trigger, wherever it's parallel with the barrel here, just like before with the stock. We got 3 pounds, 13.4 ounces. 3 pounds, 12.3 ounces. 3 pounds, 13.5 ounces. 3 pounds, 14.9 ounces. 3 pounds, 13.2 ounces, for an average of 3 pounds, 13.5 ounces. So you can see that the curved triggers result in slightly heavier trigger pulls, but you're still getting that reduction of under 4 pounds, which is exactly what we want compared to that heavy stock high 5 pound trigger pull weight. So you can see that the curved triggers do have a slightly heavier trigger pull just because you're pulling more up in the middle of the trigger other than flat triggers where we were pulling from the bottom. Thanks for watching, guys. If you're having trouble, feel free to give us a call or send us an email. Also be sure to check out our new support site at support.mcarbo.com. Thanks for watching.